Hello, welcome to the Interior Design Pathway. Throughout this pathway, you're going to learn about all the fundamentals of interior design. Everything you're going to learn throughout Module 1, 2, and 3 is going to help prepare you for the Capstone FCCLA STAR event project of interior design. Okay? So in this first tutorial, I'm going to explain to you what exactly is interior design and go through some major design ideas and principles, guidelines that you're going to be applying throughout this entire pathway. Okay? So interior design, what is it? It's to create a functional and beautiful living environment. And you can do that and achieve function and beauty by following all the basic elements and principles of design. So, is it beautiful? There's lots of different looks that people like, and what you like and what I like, it might not be the same, or what you and your classmates like might be different. So it's really important that you don't judge other people's styles or what makes other people feel at home or relaxed. So when we're categorizing rooms, we have what's called an industrial look, which is just more sterile with fun lines and things, and you can kind of see that when you look at the industrial. More traditional, and then more contemporary, which is a very popular trend if you watch HGTV. And then we have country French. This is more of like the Italian look, which is called Rocco. And then Asian look, Asian fusion is what it's called. Okay, so this should be a review. In your preliminary unit, you learned about the elements and principles of design, but you learned it just in basic as to what it is. You now are going to be applying it into interiors. All right, so whatever you did in the preliminary unit, you're going to take that and you're going to add on to it, because now you're only going to be looking at it from an interior design perspective. So just to recap, elements of design are space, line, shape, texture, and color. Okay? So the first element we're going to talk about is your space. And when you're judging your space, it's the area between objects in a room, obviously. Now, when you're judging, you want to make sure that your space has positive and negative space. Your positive space is the space that is used. Your negative space is the space that's not used. So in the picture above, this is very good use of space. You have the bed here on an angle. You have 2 sitting chairs. You have a bench. You have good clearance around all aspects of the bed. It's very good. It would be 50-50 use of positive space, which is where the placement of the furniture is, and negative space, which is your walkways and whatnot. Okay, so this picture here is great use of space. Now let's look at below. There's lots of empty blank space. You have your couch here, a table, and you have this little hutch. This is all blank space. Now, if this couch would have been put on an angle, it would create a different illusion in the room. But because either this furniture is too small, it's poorly placed, the space is lacking. So if you look at this, there's lots of open areas, and that's called wasted space then. So you want to make sure that you have equal amount of positive and negative space. All right, the next element that we're going to talk about is line. So in a room, line is the outline of an object. All right, 2 points that are connected. They give direction, and they also help divide up the space. So there's obviously different types of lines that you're going to see that create illusions in your room or rooms. So your horizontal lines, your vertical lines, diagonal, and curved. Lines come with stairwells, with lines on walls, with tables, with the way walls are designed, like here. So in the space down here on the bottom, we have a curve here. You can see that line, it's curved. We have the diagonal line here. We have all these different curved lines on the spindles. We have straight horizontal and vertical lines that are built into the stairwell, as well as up here. And so there's just lots of lines going on, which is good because it's divided. It makes your eyes kind of guide in a certain direction. This one, the industrial look on the top, again, lots of more curved lines, and then your vertical lines. Lots of it going on. There's lots of lines. Good use of design here and elements. And then we have more that are just in the naturalistic appeal of the wood. So you can see that we have some wood paneling here, and they're vertical, so that's creating lots of lines. And then we have the texture of the grain of the wood in there as well. You're also having vertical, horizontal lines with windows. And vertical lines are known to have a feeling of power, dignity, masculinity, and height. So it's very determined type of space. Horizontal lines, which you can see lots of horizontal lines here, they're a little bit more calming, restful, relaxing, spa-like, etc. So you can kind of get the idea, and if you look at it, you might even be able to feel it a little bit, like, oh, very powerful use of space by using those vertical lines versus using those horizontal lines, which is just creating a more relaxing environment and atmosphere. Now your diagonal lines, what's nice about those is they create activity and motion. They keep your eyes moving, almost like a rhythm, all right? So you can see in the space on the left, obviously the diagonal lines are coming from the staircase, and they're causing your eyes to move on a diagonal. Now the one on the right, the picture on the right, lots of diagonal lines with the roof or the ceiling effect. It's creating that it looks bigger, and there's lots of just lines that keep your eyes moving. And then the curved lines. These curved lines, they soften up the objects. Sometimes, like for this one, for example, there's a lot of curved lines going on. So some people might really like that look, and some people might not like it at all, think it's too busy. So it kind of just depends on what makes you feel comfortable in your space. Okay, your next element is shape or form, which is the solid form of a structure. All right, it's the shape that it creates from the piece of furniture. So sometimes it could be just like a 90-degree angle. Sometimes it could be beyond a 90-degree angle, 45-degree angle, etc. The next one is your texture. And texture, you want to make sure you include texture in all when you're picking out different types of finishings, fabrics, things like that. So texture is the way an object feels and looks, all right? So you can have lots of textures going on in a room. It actually makes for good design if they all complement one another. So they may be rough, smooth, shiny, hard, soft, etc. Smooth textures are going to look much more formal and sophisticated, where informal textures are going to be more rough, more industrial looking. But when you use a combination of maybe both, they can create really, really good design. And here are some examples. This is just very basic texture with you're adding texture to a space by adding floral arrangements, by having the shine from the table here, etc. Below, you have texture from your placemats that they're more rigid, informal. So if you can see the formal look, very smooth and shiny, where below, it's very rough and informal, just to give you that idea. And then color. And color is one thing that if you chose this pathway of interior design, color is probably your favorite thing to talk about. So, and it's most people's favorite thing to talk about because it's what makes the room feel the most inviting, comfortable, etc. It's the fun part of the design. So it's one of the most important tools, and it influences how people feel, and it does really create the mood of the room. So there's a bunch of rooms here that have different bursts of color, all right? So depending on what your parents allow you to have in your space and what they don't allow you to have, these are very bold colors. So the one down here is just a yellow room. And yellow is supposed to make people feel very happy and bright. And sometimes it's just too much for someone to handle all at once, especially when you're painting the entire room that bright, vibrant yellow. Same as the picture here. It's a nice bright pink room. Obviously for a little girl, a child, in most cases you're probably not going to see an adult with a hot pink room. And then above you have a more neutral palette with whites, browns, blacks, etc. And then above you have a bright, bold blue room. All right. What the trend seems to be with color at this point is, you can use all these vibrant colors, but instead of painting the entire room that color, you just have one like accent wall, and it's just a burst of color, and then everything else is pretty neutral. So it just kind of depends on what type of illusion you are creating. So just in review, your elements of design are space, line, shape, texture, and color. And in the activity, after I'm done explaining the principles of design, you're going to be finding your own pictures of rooms that represent all of those things. So your principles of design are proportion, scale, balance, emphasis, rhythm, harmony. All right? So proportion is the way that one part of the object relates to the whole part of the design. And what that means is you want to follow the rule of the golden mean. So if you take a line and you draw a line down the center of the room is proportioned. It's balanced, okay? So you want to make sure that whenever you're creating a space, you're following the golden mean. Things are equal on both parts, all right? Another way of saying this is scale, the way an object relates to another object. So effective ratios are like 2 to 3, 3 to 5, 5 to 8, 4 to 7. And what that means is, like, if you're having a ratio of chairs and you have 2 on one side and then 3 on the other, that would create good proportion in a room. Or 3 on one side of objects and then 5 on the other. So just to give you that idea. Then we have balance, which is the feeling of rest, equal weight on all parts of the room. And we have formal, where both sides are the same. And then we have informal, where the sides are different. So here is a formal balance, all right, where it's exactly equal on both parts of the room. This is called informal balance, which is not a bad thing, where you have one big block on one side and then you have little blocks on the other. What that is this is all positive space. This black is the negative space, and it's equal still. So it's still balanced, because if you put all these green blocks together, it's going to equal the same amount of positive space on the other side. So it just kind of depends on what you're trying, the illusion you're trying to create in the room. So when you look at this picture, would you say, is this formal or informal space? So if you draw a line down the center, okay, is it formal or informal? So if you go back and look, you're probably saying, okay, it's formal. Yes, because everything is completely equal on both sides when you draw a line down the center. So it does follow the golden mean rule. The next principle is rhythm, which is the feeling of movement in a room. It's creating like an illusion. It moves your eye from one point to another. And then there's a question on the screen, what moves your eye through this room? And it's just like, it's like literally, it's like the texture here, all the texture on the carpet, the breakup between rooms with the spindled columns, the different shapes that are in the ceiling, the curved lines here, the straight lines here, horizontal lines here. There's lots of things that are creating the rhythm. With rhythm, we use repetition, where a design tool is repeated over and over and over. So in here we have these leaves that are used over and over and over. So you have it on the rug, and then you have it on the pillows. All right. The rhythm in here also is the straight, clean lines that could be part of the rhythm also. You could probably look at this picture and find even more of the repetition of different tools that are repeated throughout in this room or space. Rhythm also has your transition, which is how one part of the design changes to another part. So here, in the picture on the right, you have your lines, which lead you up, stop, and then lead you right down. So that transition of the stairway leads you up and down, all right? And it makes your eyes kind of look the same way. In here, it's the arches of the wall here that separates these two spaces, all right? Another part of rhythm is what's called radiation, which moves your eye out from a central point. So in here, here's your central point, and it moves your eye out. So it's like, bam, lots going on. It's like a burst of light. You see this a lot in, you know, framed art, rugs, pillows, etc. It's not always just in a light. And then another form of rhythm is gradation, which moves your eye from light to dark or from small to large. So here's two examples of gradation with small to large, because it has the three different kinds of tables, three different sizes. If you did like shading, like the ombre look, which is very popular right now in like home decor, with like a vase where it starts off, you know, really light at the top, and then it gradates down into the darker color. So that's another form of rhythm. The next principle of design is what's called emphasis, which is the focal point of the room. It focuses your attention on that point. So when you look at the picture on the top, obviously this big mirror, it's your focal point, all right? If you look at the picture on the bottom, your focal point is probably going to be this circular thing in the center or this big palm tree. Kind of just depends on where your eye goes to first. And when you're picking out a room, it's like, what? Okay, you look at it and you're like, what is my focal point? You pick your focal point, and then you kind of pick your other furniture around it. Sometimes you have your furniture and then you're like, I really need a focal point. It just kind of completes the space. And then the next one is harmony, which is the combination of variety and unity. So unity is the room is tied together with a common denominator. It could be a shape, a color, a line, etc. And then variety is there are different shapes, colors, and objects in a room. So meaning all the texture, the lines, etc., they're all creating the harmony. So unity is when it all kind of looks the same, which is like all these circles, and variety is when you have all these colors and lines and shapes, etc., and that's what's adding variety. And again, some people might say like, oh, I'd rather have unity where it's all the same over and over and over, and other people might want this variety to create fun and illusion in their space. Okay, so when you're putting it all together, we have what's called a concept board. All right, so this is, once you've gone through all your elements and principles, you're actually going to be making a concept board at the end of this unit. And you'll get to pick different things out with textures and colors and rhythm and harmony, etc., that you think will all create good design in a bedroom. So this is my favorite combination right now is yellow and gray. So I actually found this concept board on Pinterest, and it's divided into a couple different quadrants, which is your furniture, your accents, fabric, wallpaper, and posters. And even though a lot of times people think, well, it all has to match and look the same, but when you have the variation of lines and textures and patterns, it creates really, really, really good design. So you'll have the opportunity to do that at the end of this module. If you have any questions, let your teacher know. If not, please move on to the assignment. Thank you.